Empathy and Hope. That's my my title. And it's about using the Baha'i principles and psychological insights to gain conversation, to guide conversations about climate change. So defensiveness, I think, is one of the biggest problems and the hurdles to overcome when talking about climate change. But even within people who are trying to tackle climate change, it can be, you can get defensive as well. And the picture there, defensiveness is feeling attacked when others are trying to help. And some examples of the kind of defensiveness that comes up are, oh, hang on, it's not, there we are. So denial and avoidance, but this is a very basic one. If something's very frightening and it's too big, too difficult to understand, we're likely to avoid it and deny it. And contrary to popular opinion, this is actually often not deliberate. This is really deeply felt, which makes it more difficult, of course, to manage. Efficacy beliefs and despair. Now, this comes in when we realize how small we are and how big the problem is. And what can I do? What can I do about it? I don't think I've got any efficacy here. And that leads to despair. If that gets too much, it can create depression. And we have something called distance. This can be psychological and it can be geographical. So if we hear about things in another part of the world, then it can just feel like it's just so far away. It's not, is it? How is that relevant to me? But there can be psychological distance as well. Like if it doesn't really seem to be to do with your own life or people like you, it might just feel like it's too far away, and you it's like it's not something that you need to bother with. Cognitive dissonance can occur when you hear about the changes that are coming or the changes that need to be made, and it just seems completely unlike your life at present, and it just doesn't compute, basically. Temporal discounting, that's basically short-term thinking. We have evolved to think short-term first as a survival strategy, but of course, with something like climate change, that does not work. So this defense is very difficult, very problematic. Mistrusted messengers. There's conspiracy theories. People don't trust the news. People don't trust certain organizations. And occasionally people might think that the message you're trying to bring to them has come from that. So that's a problem. Blanking out data presentations, that sometimes happens when things are presented in a way that's just too complicated to take in. It can create anxiety, you know, oh my goodness, I don't understand this. And then that can create defensiveness. And then fear of loss of face, that's something that might come if you've been talking to someone and they're actually starting to become less defensive and are starting to think, I think I'd like to change my mind. I think I'd like to take on board what's happening here. But I've been so argumentative and so defensive about this that if I now change my mind, I'm going to look silly. And that can just like be a hurdle at the last minute. So those are the kind of typical defenses that can come up. Now, there's one particular defense here called splitting or split thinking. This is a powerful defense that turns things into black and white, all or nothing, either or, and us and them. And there's various like iterations on a theme, you know. It's basically making things simple because they're difficult to get hold of, and then but the idea is if we make them simple, then we can just do something about them. But the problem is climate change is not a simple problem, and it probably doesn't have a simple solution. And when we try and boil it down to these very simple black and white terms, it can lead us into the wrong direction and create defensiveness. And, you know, at its worst extreme, it can cause complete denial of climate change. And at the other extreme, complete climate rage and despair. It's not helpful. It was helpful for our ancestors in the savannah when they had life-threatening, immediate decisions to make. And it's useful for little children, actually, with their worries and fears. But it's not helpful for adults who are tackling complex problems. Now, what is helpful are things called transitional object or transitional process. You know that children sometimes need a teddy bear or a favorite blanket or something to go to bed, even go to school with or something. That's what you call a transitional object. And it helps us move from one state of mind to another state of mind. And as adults, it may not be a bunny, but transitional processes or transitional objects help us move from one state of mind to another and can be really, really helpful in raising capacity and changing one's mind, taking on board new information, tackling new issues. And there are adult transitional processes and objects that we use as Baha'is, even things like the teachings, the beliefs, the regular prayers, and so on. They actually act like transitional processes, and that's how our capacity is built. So we need to approach these discussions about climate change with empathy, psychological safety, and a focus on education and collaboration. And I'm just going to now just go through a list of suggestions of ways that we can reduce split thinking and use adult transitional processes in our conversations about these things. So we can create psychological safety with empathy. If you begin your conversation by acknowledging different perspectives and expressing understanding of individual concerns, it goes a long way to bringing people on board, if that's how you start. And a Baha'i quote, I think, in relation to this is, "A kindly tongue is the lodestone of the hearts of men. It is the bread of the spirit. It clotheth the words with meaning. It is the fountain of the light of wisdom and understanding." Okay, and another thing, we can create a bridge with common values and goals, showing how climate change aligns with shared interests for a better future for all. This is to reduce what I said before about psychological distance, when we think, oh, those people are so different to us, their situation is so far away and so different. We have to create a bridge. So common values and goals are a good way of doing that. And a quote, the world of humanity is like a tree. The nations or peoples are the different limbs or branches of that tree, and the individual human creatures are as the fruits and blossoms thereof. In this way, Baha'u'llah expressed the oneness of humankind. Abdul Baha. Okay, we can frame discussions in a realistic but positive light. In other words, yes, we want to bring in how serious everything is, but we need to quickly bring in solutions and the potential for positive change. We need to inspire hope and motivation instead of guilt, helplessness, or despair. Climate anxiety is a growing mental health problem, actually, in therapists' offices all around the country now. And trust me, it disempowers individuals from taking constructive action. It does not help. So we need to frame our words with this in mind. And there's a quote, "As material affairs go from bad to worse in the world, the confidence, optimism, love, and hope of the believers will, by force of contrast, shine out as an ever brighter beacon, leading the people to the path of truth, the way laid down by God, which alone can guide them to the promise of the future." Education is a fantastic transitional object or process for, well, children and adults, because it empowers at the same time as it informs. So any knowledge and information that you have, you can share that in a way that includes others and gives them tools. And of course, education. Regard man as a mine rich in gems of inestimable value. Education can alone cause it to reveal its treasures and enable mankind to benefit therefrom. Make it relevant by highlighting how climate change directly affects local communities. This makes it more real. And this sort of, I don't know, resonated with me about our focus on the neighbourhood, actually, in the plan. So I chose this quote: "In thousands of communities, Baha'is have set in motion neighbourhood-level processes that seek to empower individuals of all ages to recognise and develop their spiritual capacities and to channel their collective energies towards the betterment of their communities." So I think it kind of ties in nicely with our work with building local communities. Avoid blame, even if it's true. Blame is just like obvious, that will just lead to defensiveness of any kind. And so instead of blaming, focus on systemic issues and collective responsibility to prevent a defensive response and promote a sense of shared accountability. God, exalted be his glory, wisheth not the humiliation of his servants. Verily, he is the compassionate, the merciful. Encourage small, achievable actions and give examples of individuals or communities taking action. Make your examples directly relatable to your audience, or psychological distance will nullify them. So it's got to be realistic and relatable. He whom the grace of thy mercy aideth, though he be but a drop, shall become the boundless ocean, and the merest atom which the outpouring of thy loving kindness assisteth shall shine even as the radiant star. Encourage dialogue. So, you know, we might be, I don't know, talking to people, we might be giving presentations somewhere to people, but at all times, encourage dialogue by asking open-ended questions that invite reflection and discussion. Allow all concerns to be heard. And this is really building on Baha'i consultation. No power can exist except through unity. No welfare and no well-being can be attained except through consultation. Consultation is a shining light which in a dark world leadeth the way and guideth. Avoid sounding like a hashtag or a news headline. Trust in the media is plummeting. Use your own natural words, guided by facts and spiritual principles as you work to build trust. So it gets tricky when we're talking about something that's very, very topical. We can sometimes start using phrases that have been used on the news or wherever. And that doesn't help with defensiveness if you come across defensiveness. And with that in mind, the quote here is, "As with all other forms of consultation, however, such exchanges are spiritually and intellectually helpful to a believer to the extent that they take place within the context of Baha'i principle." So I think, you know, grounding yourself in the faith rather than in memes or hashtags is important. Use simple visual data. If you think about it, the really hard work is to take in the ramifications of the data. So the data itself needs to be easily understandable. And if you've created a presentation and you're in any doubt, run it past a complete layperson first and see if they understand it. And I'm not saying you should draw a picture to depict your data, but I thought this was a good quote. Art can better awaken noble sentiments than cold rationalizing, especially among the mass of the people. Be mindful of cultural differences and tailor messages to resonate with diverse perspectives. And here I'm actually talking about UK culture. So across the UK, there are many different localized cultures and nuances, class differences, and so on. If we can take these on board and speak to them, then we can foster more inclusive conversations. It is just the diversity and variety that constitutes its charm. Each flower, each tree, each fruit, beside being beautiful in itself, brings out by contrast the qualities of the others and shows to advantage the special loveliness of each and all. Thus should it be among the children of men. And collaborative solutions, as we know, as Baha'is, we know this, have great power. And actually, when we do things with other people, they can be like transitional objects for us when we're together with them. And emphasizing that it requires collective effort and diverse expertise generates a sense of shared responsibility. So it's not like all being landed on the so-called experts, but it's all of us. So powerful is the light of unity that it can illuminate the whole earth. It is incumbent upon every man in this day to hold fast unto whatsoever will promote the interests and exalt the station of all nations and just governments. And finally, make it easy for someone to change their mind after being defensive. Be mindful that these topics can feel like a power struggle to the other person, and they may fear losing face. I found this nice quote by Abdu'l-Baha. A man may converse with the ego within him, saying, "May I do this? Would it be advisable for me to do this work?" Such as this is conversation with the higher self. And we have to somehow allow space for that person to do that without our egos or our opinions or our whatever, our knowledge even coming in the way of that. And so I just think that we can skillfully navigate conversations using a nuanced understanding of the psychological factors at play, coupled with a compassionate and inclusive approach, which reduces defensiveness. Psychological insights and spiritual principles from the Baha'i Faith combine readily in a holistic and constructive approach to addressing the complex and urgent challenges of climate change.